Everyone good?
Yes.
All right, today I'm going to be pitching a buy for Disney. So, everyone knows Disney as a company, but not everyone knows how Disney operates as a business. And so, the way they work is they're basically split between two separate businesses. They have, on one side, their media segments, and what this is their television channels, and the way they generate revenue is both through affiliate fees, which is when cable providers actually pay the channel for every subscriber they get, and also for their advertising. And so in their portfolio, they have Disney Channel, ESPN, ABC Family, and A&E. And they actually have some of the most highly sought out advertisement spots in the industry. Now, ESPN and ABC are really where you see this, and the reason is because they attract a certain type of viewer that is harder to basically find. For ESPN, these people are more willing to buy products, studies have found, than many other viewers. And so because of this, people really want to be able to advertise on these channels. Now, second, we have our Disney branded businesses. And the way this works is almost cyclical. Now, I'll explain. I'll give you a more specific example once we get there, but for now, I'll just give a brief description. And so the way they start is with movies. They produce these big box office hits, and once the movie comes out, they then move on to merchandise. They sell consumer goods to their consumers, and these are generally anything from clothing to toys. And this is actually sometimes makes more money than the movie ended up doing. After that, they are able to license these characters out for other companies to advertise using them. And so this can be used for anything from macaroni like Kraft to a game like Star Wars Battlefront from EA Sports. And lastly, we bring it all together at the theme park, where they actually bring these characters to life and allow the Disney consumer to actually interact with them. And what this does, by having all four of these streams of revenue, they now allow Disney consumers to interact with the products they create on multiple different platforms. And so it gives you this all-encompassing experience with Disney, and that's what really separates them from other competitors in the industry. So let's see where they're currently at. Fiscal year 15, they had the best top line, bottom line, and earnings per share ever. This is actually the 5th year in a row they're able to do this. They beat earnings all 4 quarters, and their fiscal year actually ends right here. It ends either the last week in September or the first week in October. And so they ended on a peak and actually ended up outperforming the SP 500 by 17%. So let's go into this year. As you can see, there's 2 pretty big spikes. And the first one and the second actually are related. And it's due to ESPN losing subscribers. And I'll go into that in just a little bit. But even with the subscription loss, quarter 1, 2016 was Disney's best quarter ever. They ended up having a 14% growth for their revenue, and this was mainly attributed to a record high in attendance at their theme parks, as well as the new hit from their Star Wars series, The Force Awakens. And so The Force Awakens is actually the highest grossing movie in domestic history, and has already grossed over $2 billion internationally. And what this has done is it increased the year-over-year operating income for that segment by over 86%. On top of this, if you look right here, we've had double-digit EPS growth for the past 10 quarters, which is really, really good. They have a CAGR of 22%. So, right now, as I've told you, the major losses we've seen in this stock is due to a loss of subscribers for ESPN. And there are several reasons for this, and there's several results due to these reasons. And so the industry itself is seeing a good amount of trends. The first trend is cable cutting. Now what cable cutting is people who traditionally had a cable provider, they're deciding to drop that and move on to internet streaming services. This is a very common industry-wide trend. There was actually a lot of their competitors and other people in the cable industry, they all dropped the same time that Disney did, because it's a very big trend that people are seeing. Now, a trend that's more specific to Disney itself is the trend of people moving towards skinny bundles, skinny packages. And so what this is people that used to want every channel out there, they want all 600, they want whatever you could give them. People are now trying to save money on their cable, and they're opting for, instead of everything, they just want the most important ones. And a lot of these people are doing this to save money. Now that gets hard with ESPN, because as I told you, they have the highest affiliate rate in the entire industry. It's actually $6.61 just to have ESPN. So a lot of these skinny bundles are leaving them out. Now what these trends have caused is a 7 million person subscription loss over the past 2 years. And what that has resulted in is mass panic for investors towards Disney. They no longer think that Disney is going to be the stock it used to be. And a big reason for this, and it's also a big risk for this segment, is Disney is about 25% of, ESPN is about 25% of Disney's entire operating income. So if ESPN starts tanking, the company as a whole might not do so well. That being said, I think the market hugely overreacted to this, and I don't think it's as big of a deal as people think. And I think that Disney has done a great job mitigating each of the points that I brought up. So first off, we have cable cutting. The way they can get by this is they actually have a 33% stake in Hulu. Now Hulu is the world's, not the world's, but the US's third largest streaming company. And it's only behind Netflix and Amazon. And Amazon can go either way, because a lot of people buy Amazon to get Amazon Prime. They want the 2-day shipping, not necessarily to stream content. And so there isn't data saying how many views they actually get. So I'm giving it a conservative third place right now. Next we have the skinny packages. And what they've been doing is they've been teaming up with companies and cable providers to be included in these smaller packages. And now two of the most successful ones recently are Dish TV's Sling and Sony's Vu. And what they are trying to do with this is they're trying to appeal to an audience, to a consumer that is either younger, because they're typically who are opting for these streaming services, or also people who are trying to save money. Next we have the subscriber loss. I don't think this is going to stay down for too much longer. And the reason because of this is the huge partnership they just had with China's Tencent. What Tencent is one of China's largest media, entertainment, and online advertising companies. And so they have several different subsidiaries. Two of the more popular ones are QQ and the infamous WeChat. And so through this partnership, over 1.3 billion users are now going to be able to directly stream ESPN content, as well as being able to read articles online. And the reason this is so big is because of what China's hoping to do with the sports entertainment industry. It's currently sitting at about $65 billion, but by 2025, this is supposed to increase to $1 trillion. It's one of the fastest anticipated growing industries in all of China right now. And so if they can get a foothold in there now, when it actually starts to pick up and grow, I think this can be a huge driving factor for ESPN subscription growth. And now finally, we have panic from the market. I think this panic actually gave us a great buying opportunity. I don't think that people have to be as worried as they are. The segment still grew 10% top line, even with the loss of subscribers. And ESPN is by far the most popular sports television and I think even online presence in the entire country. So I think that since they're an industry leader, that we don't have to worry that they're going to keep everything up to where they're supposed to be. On top of all of this, if the subscription loss ends up being too much, Disney has already confirmed that they are capable of doing an over-the-top subscription, basically a streaming subscription for ESPN. Right now, they don't feel that's necessary, but if push comes to shove, they are capable of doing this. Next, we have the major box office releases. So if you look right here, I'm sure all of you guys recognize almost every movie there. Every single one, except for Zootopia and Guardians of the Galaxy 2, is supposed to gross at least $1 billion. Zootopia is unsure because it is an original, it's not a sequel, and it's not based off anything else. And Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is expected to hit close to 850 to 900 million. So, that in itself is a lot of revenue. On top of that, where the real money comes in is the franchises these create. And so a specific example I can give you guys is Star Wars. Star Wars already grossed over $2 billion in the box office. On top of that, Sales for merchandise from the movie are expected to hit over $5 billion by the end of this year. Next, we have licensing. They paired up with EA Games, and they now have Star Wars Battlefront. They made a new one for the movie, and this has already sold over 13 million copies, and it's still climbing. And lastly, we have the theme parks. Due to the major success that we've seen the movie have, they're actually now building a new attraction in both Disney Hollywood Studios and Disneyland, where people will be able to come in and get the full Star Wars experience that they're looking for. Last but not least, we have Disney Shanghai. Now, this is the newest park. It has a grand opening of June 16th and is going to be the first park open since 2005. It's actually the biggest park ever created to date. Now, the reason I think this is such a big play, for the long term especially, is because it's situated where it's easily accessible by over 330 million people. Now, what this means is a greater number of people than the entire population of the United States are within 3.5 hours of being able to attend this park. They expect between 25 million and 50 million people in the first year, which will generate a profit, not a profit, but a revenue of about 1.5 plus billion. They anticipate that by 2018, this will hit 2 billion, which will get it very close to actually doubling the international part of the segment that this is within, which is huge. And so, what people might be thinking right now is, why China? You know, there's a lot of economic slowdown going on. Why would we pick to build in China? Well, the CEO, Bob Iger of Disney, he's actually very bullish on China. Now, the reason is because he thinks that the Chinese consumer is still spending. He says that sales in that geographical location have not started to go down, even though the economy is slowing. On top of that, McKinsey recently came out with a study showing that the entertainment industry is growing by over 17%, with a 17% CAGR over the past 5 years in China. And a lot of this and what this is doing is it's making family entertainment a lot more popular. Now, on top of this, in the next 4 years, over half of Chinese people are going to be considered affluent. Now, in our standards, it's only $16,000 a year that they have to make, but in China that is considered affluent. And what this means is there's going to be a lot more disposable income that people have never had before. And what this can cause is a lot of spending on unnecessary items. That's part of the McKinsey report as well. They see the biggest growth in items that are unnecessary. People, now that they have more money, they're going to spend it on either vacations or things like games and toys, instead of spending more money on food or other areas where they typically would have. So, a big part of this play is management. Disney has had some of the best management, and that's what really led to all the success they've had. Starting with CEO Bob Iger. He's been with Disney for about 15 years. He's been running it for a little over 10 of those. And so he's actually been a huge part in the recent acquisitions, which have been immensely successful, including Pixar, Marvel, and the latest Lucasfilms. They actually bought that for a little over $4 billion, and as you see, in just one movie, they've already made that money back. Next we have, a little side note for him, he is anticipated on retiring in 2018. Now, this isn't definite, and I'll go into why in just one moment. Next we have Thomas Staggs. He was the CFO for 12 years, and recently was placed as the COO. Now, he was in charge of getting Disney Shanghai up and running, and he actually recently announced that he will be leaving the company soon. And the reason is because since Bob Iger is expected to leave, they started looking for a new CEO. And initially, people thought that this search was going to go on internally, and they thought Thomas Staggs was the guy for the position. But what ended up happening is they expanded that talent search outside of the company, and especially for him, decreased the chances of him getting to be CEO. And that didn't sit well with him, and he decided to bail ship due to it. Next we have Christine McCarthy. She is fairly new in her position, but has been with Disney for quite a long time. She is the new CFO. She recently replaced the successor to Thomas Staggs. He didn't stay too long, but she is now there, and she's actually the first woman ever to be on Disney's e-board. Next we have comps. They are above average in every area, especially if you look at earnings per share. They absolutely crush it there. No one comes nearly close to them there. And if you look at the share price with their competitors, it's moved up exponentially faster than any of their closest competitors. Is everyone good with this? All right. Next we have my DCF. Can you guys all see this? A little bit? Want me to switch over? Is this the one I'm supposed to open?
Just down. Just down.
Okay. You guys want me to zoom in a little more? So I'm going to walk you through the DCF just a little bit. So if you look, I put a 13% growth in revenue this year. Now, a lot of this is due to two big factors. The first is the addition of Star Wars. This is the first ever year that they've produced our Star Wars movie, and they're actually going to have a second one coming out towards the end of the year. And so they had a huge amount of success from the first one. I anticipate the second will have as much success as that one did. And on top of that, they also are going to have Shanghai, China coming out. That's an extra $1.5 billion that they've never had before and is now going to be added to their top line. And so they already had the best quarter ever. They had over $15.2 billion in revenue. And so I think that not every quarter is going to be this good, but they're all going to be pretty up there. For the years after that, I tried to incorporate the movies coming out and also the growth that each different segment is supposed to have. I did factor in the decrease of subscription at a flat rate for ESPN. I did cut down that rate a little bit because of Tencent.
Can you just probably see the liners?
Sorry about that. Here we go. And so I didn't factor in Tencent because since it is so new, I didn't feel comfortable guessing how many subscriptions they're going to get off of that. Let's see, what else? I kept cost of goods sold going pretty much flat the entire time. Is there anything specifically people want to look at? What is it, yes?
So what's obviously the reason they've been so successful besides their box office hits and their business model is that they've been able to drive margin growth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're doing single digit, mid-single, high single digit growth, top line, but they're doing double digit, high double digit margin growth. So do you expect that how are they doing it, first of all? And second, can you think they're going to continue doing it?
I don't have an answer of how they're doing it, but I think that a company the size of Disney, it's probably going to get to a point where they no longer can keep increasing these margins. They have very good people running the company, so I think that they are constantly focusing on improving these margins, but I think it's going to get to a point, I don't know what point that is, where they no longer can keep increasing that. And I think once they get to that point, they're going to have to rely more heavily on top line growth, and they're also going to have to rely on getting into newer markets such as China, and really getting in when the time is right.
So what's their highest margin business? ESPN, 25%?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Media networks as a whole is actually 44%. It's estimated that ESPN makes up a little over half of that.
So where is the margin growth been coming from? I guess that's a better question. Like which segment?
Yes, let me see. I don't have a firm answer on that. The margin I was just telling you about, the media networks is actually, the margin growth for that one is starting to decrease, and one of the main causes of that is a lot of the new agreements that ESPN is making with between like the NFL, NBA, MLB, they're starting to charge more money for that, which obviously is going to decrease their margins there.
Yeah, sure.
Then if you don't know why are you projecting margins even to continue to go up going forward? It looks like it's from a decrease in operating expenses as a percent of revenue. So why are operating expenses decreasing as a percent of revenue going forward?
I think that was something that I projected. They have been increasing over the past, and so although I wasn't quite sure what's going to drive it, I still think that they're going to increase doing that.
Do you know what percentage of revenue is their merchandising, or what percentage of revenue from their films is like merchandising?
Those are two separate segments, and they don't really disclose like what goes to what film. Is that what you're asking?
Kind of, well, because like with a lot of these films are like sequels, right? So I'm assuming that they don't make as much in merchandising with a sequel than they would with like the first film, right?
That would make sense. I actually don't know a specific number. I know that merchandise itself makes up about 17% of their revenue, though. If that helps. Yeah.
Do you know the percentage of the cost that goes to the amusement parks? Because I feel like there's a lot of cost in that, especially in Shanghai.
They didn't break that down specifically to what park. They just had international and they had their domestic. I know I included, where is it? I included in their PP&E, there's actually a $300 million pre-opening expense in their Shanghai resort, and so I did factor that in for year one. If you look, I go down, free cash flow's a bit lower that year, but picks up after that.
Can you go to the valuation too?
Sure. So I'm actually gonna go back.
When is that Shanghai place being built?
She says the Shanghai thing is opening in June.
Yes.
Where'd they get the money to build that? I feel like it's capital intensive, I don't really see it all.
So they only own a 43% stake in that, and the other 57% stake is owned by a company in China, and that company has given Disney some loans for that. I don't know where they've gotten all of it.
So that 1.5 billion that they projected in the first year, they'd only be getting 43% of?
Yes. Canale.
So what's the retention rate on the ESPN viewers when they do switch platforms? I kind of view ESPN as like a convenient thing to watch maybe if it's on. Are people, when they switch platforms, going out of their way to stream it on Hulu or read the articles on Tencent?
So the Tencent is actually, that just started in January, so there's no data on that whatsoever. You cannot stream ESPN on Hulu as far as I know. You can't, I don't think you can stream full content online yet. That's part of the over-the-top process. For retention rate, I have no idea. I know that 80% of people in America interact with ESPN at least once a month. Yes.
Okay, two questions. First, China, big play. Right?
Yes.
How much, so in my opinion, this could be wrong, the success of the theme park probably depends partly on the popularity of the films, right? Of
Yes,
Disney
to a degree.
films. So what's the, of 2 billion in international growth you saw with a lot of their Disney films, how much of that is from China has been growing as not? Entertainment might be growing, but there's different forms of entertainment.
They don't break that down in 10K.
You said what might be important, like if people don't like the Disney films, why would they go to the park?
Right.
Forgot my second question.
That being said, they have had the highest, at least domestically, they had the highest attendance they've ever had, and people seem to be liking the films more recently. They've actually liked them a lot more than some of their competitors.
Internationally?
Huh?
Internationally?
Internationally decreased mostly due to Paris. Due to some things going on over there, there was a decrease in people there for a few, like there's a little lull there, but internationally it has not been increasing too much. I think it's been decreasing actually by about 2% last year, but
And why do you have CapEx growing still, by the way?
Let's see.
It goes from 2 to 3 to 3.5, and then goes to 5, for the next 4 to 5 for the next 5 years. Yeah.
What do you mean?
So, I mean, their big park is finished, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, where's the cap, why is there so much capex for? I mean, I feel like, so it was at 3.8, and then they probably were like, we're at, and then 2.7, they're like, we're gonna make a park. And then, you know, they put another $1 billion, $2 billion capex, and the park's finished. So where's the rest of the capex gonna come from?
I'm assuming that they're gonna have to keep adding on to and maintaining the new Shanghai. I don't know exactly how much they're gonna do, but I'm guessing they're gonna have to put a decent amount of money into keeping that running.
Yeah, okay. I'm just saying, I think you might, if you don't, I think you might be a little bullish on the capex spend, so that just might add more to the bottom line. So
Okay.
Yeah, they should straight up.
Bennett.
Yeah, so could you go to the slide where you talk about ESPN? And then while you're doing that, just sort of, and it's a little bit anecdotal, but so the stock price from December through like February was down from, I think it was like 115 at the beginning of December.
Mm-hmm.
And then it bottomed out
At
at
88?
like 88, yeah. Which like, you're talking about, that's when Star Wars was sort of in its prime in
Right.
theaters and, you know, breaking all the records. And I think most of it, from what I remember, just reading articles in the paper, was, you know, due to sort of concerns over ESPN. So I thought one of the things that, you know, you didn't address as much in this, which this is kind of like to Yaz's point on margins, but it's not just that they're losing subscribers, but they're getting squeezed on both sides from like a supply perspective and a demand perspective, because they can't, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they can't charge that $6, $7 they used to for each subscriber because there's just less demand for it.
That's
Right.
actually, that's not fully correct. Over the past year, the reason that segment's still went up 10% is because they've been able to charge more for affiliate fees and for advertisements.
Okay. But in terms of like
Long term,
cable companies in their package, they have to, the consumer is essentially paying ESPN like $6, $7 a month, right?
Right.
To have that channel in their cable package.
Mhm.
Has that price gone down at all? Do you know? Do they break that out? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that is the
Okay,
affiliate
okay.
fee.
Is that sustainable? Like, is that?
They've been the highest in the industry for quite some time, and they're still increasing. You could say maybe it's not sustainable due to the fact that they are losing subscribers, but as of now, it seems to be doing them pretty well over the past few years.
Okay, that's surprising. And then secondly, from like the supply side, I know
Yes.
they've signed huge contracts
Huge,
with
yep.
like the NCAA.
And that is what really is squeezing
yeah,
the margin in that
yeah,
area, yes.
Yeah, so do you know if on those contracts there's any opportunity for them to restructure, to unload some of the burden, so to speak?
Not that I know of.
Okay, alright.
I'm not entirely sure.
So they're stuck with those for like 10, 15 years?
I don't think they usually make them for that long.
Okay,
It's usually a shorter horizon because I think since sports are changing, not too substantially, but people's preferences obviously are, I think they want to keep those a bit shorter so they can keep up with whatever's going on at the moment. Hannah?
Can you tell me a little bit more about management? So is he definitely retiring? And
So,
who are they considering, and like what's his strategy for like the rest of his tenure was?
I think if he's done here, this is his actual retirement, he would be done. They were looking at several people. I want to say one of them was high up at Apple, and I forget where the other person is, but right now it's very tentative whether he's going to stay or not. People have high hopes for whoever does replace him. They know Disney's not going to throw this in the hands of just anybody. The CEO really matters to this company, and they've been rated years upon years to have some of the best CEOs out there, specifically him. And so I think that they definitely are going to find someone that is going to run the company right after him. The Thomas Staggs incident, that just happened within the past, I want to say, 2 months. So they haven't looked too much. I don't think they thought it was going to be as pressing of a matter. But now that what you could consider their backup is no longer there, it now becomes more of a concern.
So one last question.
What do you got
I
for me,
was
Albert?
just gonna ask to look at the comps again, because they're trading at like, what, like a 19 PE right now?
18.
18 PE?
18 and a half, yep.
is higher than all their other media competitors, and
It's a little below Fox, but a little higher than yes.
yeah, and I was just wondering, they're the biggest company by far. Where are you seeing all the value from the growth that you're expecting, and do you really expect a company that big to grow enough to warrant the value that you're seeing?
I think they definitely are going to grow. I also think that it still is a value play. They're constantly producing the best movies out. If you look at, I think, which one was it? I think Time Warner just had Superman vs. Batman, right? Smitty, can you comment on that? Is that?
Yeah.
That's Time Warner? Okay. That got some of the worst reviews out there. And people, they're now worrying that their next movie that Time Warner comes out with, it has to be very much on point, because if not, consumers are going to lose their faith in those movies, and that's not something you see whatsoever in Disney. Disney's increasingly coming out with some of the best movies out there. They're breaking records with their movies, one after another, and so I think that it's just as much a value play.
Great. Good job. Alright, we gotta make a quick exit.